Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour à toutes et à tous. Bienvenue dans cette salle Kigali. Je suis Marwane Ben Yahmed, le directeur de la publication de Jeune Afrique.
Benjamin, Jeune Afrique director. And then we're going just to put this subject, and then we're going to talk about this topic, and we're going to talk about doing business of the World Bank. And this panel is dedicated to 4 prime ministers with whom we are going to discuss this issue. In particular, we are going to talk about it with CEOs. We are a bit late, but don't worry. We are going to go through everything. Our 4 participants that we are going to invite now is Mr. Edouard Girene, the Prime Minister of Rwanda. Welcome. Thank you very much, and you can have a seat. Patrice Emery Provoada from São Tomé and Principe. Begle Mumbe, Prime Minister of Ivory Coast. You are welcome. Mr. Amadou Oureba, Prime Minister of Guinea. We are going to tackle a complicated subject that we are going to simplify. So we are just going to talk about doing business. How do we do so that the companies be free to allow states just to do their mission, but so that they can work with complicated macroeconomic situation and with indebtedness, the states that you represent will depend on the companies. So there are so many reforms that have been put in place in your different countries, but with the necessity to have more taxes and stimulate economies and the strategies that are put in place. And sometimes it's not that coherent. What is the fiscal policy that must satisfy the ambitions? We are just going to answer on that with our four speakers with the responsibilities of leading the government. And then you are going to talk about that in terms of creating employment. Mr. Prime Minister of Rwanda, with your honor, because you are our host, Rwanda today is considered with the doing business climate that is better, with the reforms that have been decisive in that area. Thank you very much, Mr. Ben. Before saying anything and responding to the question, allow me first of all to say thank you to all the participants who came to Kigali for the conference. We are very happy to have you here in Kigali, for having chosen Kigali for the conference. Thank you. We had some edition in Kigali 5 years ago. It was in 2019, so we are very glad to have you here. I'd like to congratulate Jeune Afrique for organizing this conference from the beginning. Since the morning, it was a success, and we believe that it's just going to continue to be a success. Thank you. So regarding the question that you have asked me, how Rwanda managed to improve the doing business I think it is an issue with conviction. Our leadership from the beginning was convinced that our development is going to depend on the private sector. We were convinced that finally we're convinced. So the issue was how to do that, how the private sector would become the engine of our economy. With what we did then was to create the trust between the public and the private sector, and that trust was created by the dialogue. We had always had a regular dialogue with the private sector. When we talk about private sector, it's not only Rwandan private sector, but also companies coming to Rwanda. So the dialogue with our private sector, it's regular. We are in contact directly, and we discuss development, and we discuss how we want to organize our economy. But for the foreign investors, we've created what we call Rwanda Development Board, or RDB. It's an agency that has the responsibility to speak to investors, to come to Rwanda, to give them the interest, to explain to them how it works in Rwanda. It is a window where the investors use so that they can access information about the economy in Rwanda. So the dialogue is there all the time. But we have also other factors. We talk about macroeconomic stability. This is very important for any actor and any investor. And in the fight against corruption, because you cannot invest in a country where corruption is prevalent. So this is another indicator that shows that the investors have trust in the public system, but also the efficiency of the public sector in general, because whether it is legal or regulatory framework or that way. So you spoke about reforms. I'm going to talk about some of them. We made legal reforms. We had done reforms on investment code, and then we wanted that the code to be favorable to Rwandan investors and foreign investors. And this was done in collaboration with the investors that gave us ideas, saying that we need to do everything in place, or to put everything in place so that investment may be done. So when we talk about reforms, we think there are things that are written on papers and that can be kept on the shelves. But that's not what we did. What we did was, of course, legal text and then the investment code. But what we did just the implementation of that. So I'm going to give you a practical example. You cannot attract an investor without infrastructure. So we have invested massively in infrastructure, whether it is transport, it means roads. Now the road network is very comfortable, a very good one. Kigali capital is connected to all the provinces of the country and all the localities of the country. There is no area in Rwanda where you cannot go with a car and arrive there, and in a comfortable manner, in a planned manner. So the road network is well developed. Second example that I'm going to give, because I'm not going to talk about everything, it is internet connection, because we are in a world where we have to communicate. When the communication is not going well with the communication, what we did was just to increase the internet coverage for the whole territory. So Rwanda is connected. Wherever you are in Rwanda, you can use your internet and then easily communicate. Another infrastructure that we invested in is electricity, especially when we speak about manufacturing. We talk about manufacturing industry, but you can talk about that without electricity. So as a government, we have invested in the production of electricity and distribution of electricity. Especially when we talk electricity, we talk about household connection, but all the villages of Rwanda have access to electricity. Wherever any investor wants to go to put their company, then they have electricity. With households, we have connected 74% of the households in Rwanda. So these are the examples that we can give on how we have facilitated the doing business in Rwanda. And the last one I would like to mention now is the implementation of what we call the special economic zones, where we have established different zones, and then we have put in place the basic infrastructure, water, electricity, roads, and then if you want to start in a company or a plant, you go there and you are established. You find roads, water, electricity, infrastructure are there. So we have all those special economic zones in all the country, around the country, in districts, and then everything is decentralized. So I'm going to summarize by there, and then because we don't have enough time. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for following. Second question, Prime Minister of Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast is one of the dynamic economies in Africa, but the country today is in a different situation in terms of budget because it is highly indebted, 58% of indebtment. So in 2030, so the government wants the private sector to take matters in their hands so that they may have a good contribution. So the National Plan of Investment 2025, so is going to invest 90,000 billion. So what is the evaluation you do in relation to what you see as the private sector doing according to your expectations? So the private sector plays an important role, especially that they contribute in the National Development Plan of 2021-2025, and then we succeeded to mobilize 54% of investments that we were waiting for, expecting from the private sector. Now, regarding 2023 perspective, the role of the private sector is going to be strengthened so that in 2030 we are going to put on the market, we're going to create 8 million jobs to allow the private sector to be more dynamic and to contribute to the emergence of Ivory Coast. So now, with the private sector, in terms of infrastructure, we have three main infrastructure levels. First of all, it is the Yupougon industrial zone that we have put in place. And we have an industrial zone at San Pedro, which is a particular other industrial zone at Bassam, with specifics there that are allowing the private sector to work in better conditions. But the general thinking of Ivory Coast is that more taxes kill the taxes. So now we try to better the compliance to taxes. So we have done an analysis of taxes in Ivory Coast to identify weaknesses and strengths. So that's how some mechanisms are strengthened, especially regarding the increasing of the taxpayers. The numbers of the taxpayers that work has increased, has proved and given some indexes that giving us some results that more taxpayers are being beneficial. Now, regarding the land taxes, we have strengthened the land taxes by putting in place a system of tax clubs, digital tax club, to change the methodology that was there so that we may highlight weakness areas, whether in Abidjan and in other parts of Ivory Coast. So we want the private sector to contribute to the development by allowing the private sector to pay the right taxes without more taxes. And then we are concentrating on the taxes and to try to really propose the taxes that are really not going to be imposed, but taxes that are going to be complied with. So when we talk about the VAT, I think we would go by 13 to 14 to 15%. So what we could do, we could find a mechanical way where we automatically consider the VAT, and then the tax rate is just going to be allowing better conditions of action or activities, business activities. And then we have a strength in terms of electricity, and then we take advantage of the water availability, and then we have a good distribution of water for companies. Also with road communication, we have good road networks, 9,000 kilometers that are there, 50,000 kilometers throughout the country. With digital coverage, we have a high rate of digital coverage of 74%. I think that the companies are in good conditions. So I think the Ivory Coast is allowing itself, or allowing its companies to do well, to get better taxes, so that companies may work in the best conditions possible. Thank you, Prime Minister. Next question to you. Prime Minister of Guinea. You're leading a country that is in a different situation, with advantages, with rate growth of 5%, less public debt. You are noted D. You assumed office recently. What is urgent? What is urgent in terms of doing business in your country? Thank you. First of all, allow me to come back on the numbers. It was expected 5.8%. As you know, we had our issue with oil, so we need to reduce that number. We reduce it by 2%. However, the numbers of our growth rate in relation to the potential of Guinea Republic, they are numbers that are below our ambitions in relation to our capacity to produce more. We have a bigger hydroelectric potential, agriculture potential, and more and more. But you have mentioned that we had a low level of indebtedness compared to our neighbor. We are in a relatively better position in terms of indebtedness. So there is a phase in which we are in now that what we have to do is state building. Guinea is coming from far away. So that's why it has known a lot of issues and some false hopes. But with the current transition with General Doumbouya, we hope that we are in a phase that we are going to put the fundamentals in place in terms of infrastructure. More than 1,000 kilometers of roads are finished. We are going to continue in our development to allow General Doumbouya to be the president of 2,000 kilometers that are asphalted. Regarding macroeconomic aspects, we are in a phase where we're doing reforms for ourselves. It means that we are not going to go through reforms that are imposed to us by partners, but we must make reforms that are going to allow us to clean our public finances and to increase our capacity to get into domestic resources so that we develop and rationalize the expenses, because currently we are reducing the expenses of the government by reducing the public companies, and then we are cleaning the finances today. That's why the IMF has created an agreement that is helping us to go through that difficult phase. So Guinea currently is in a position of putting in place fundamentals for the economic growth. However, we have had issues with the electricity sector, and then we are trying to put some order with that sector that is having issues. And from now to the next season, from now to 10 months, in addition to what is there already, we are going to have additional of 500 megawatt of solar energy, especially keeping thinking about what we are doing. We have another important aspect of our national policy. Simandu has an investment of billions of dollars and has an important mining project to extract, to do mining of Simandu. So the construction of a Trans-Guinean that is going to change the landscape, the economic landscape of a country of Guinea, and then the construction of a port near Africaria. This is going to allow currently to put the direction into an economic move that was long awaited. So now we need to stop with the economy where the public is dominating. Now the private sector has to take its due place. That's why today this is an opportunity that we have a call to action so that they may know that Guinea in the years to come is an attractive country where the private sector is developed and where there is a potential, an important potential, that is available to those who want and who think they can be rich, they can add value, they can help in stabilizing the economy and then respond to the aspirations of the population.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Trovoada.
Thank you so much indeed, Mr. Trovoada. I think you're a particular case for this panel. You are Prime Minister of São Tomé Principe since November 2022, but you've already been in 3 terms. And then also something more specific is about the Constitution. You're the head of executives. And doing business classification, the way I've been saying it with the World Bank, I think this is a wish of 2021. Actually, you in a 170 position, maybe because of the weakness of a legal environmental, framework. But tell us a little bit, what have you put in place? What are the particular measures that you're trying to speed up? Can you have the floor, please, and express yourself? Thank you. Yes, indeed. Thank you. Good evening. And then also, thank you for Rwanda giving us a suitable environment and setting, which is welcoming us. First of all, let me redouble my language, focus on figures. But in my country is a country of democracy that works with very soft alternance. And that is true that we're waiting or we're expecting to have a vision for development, share development, the share vision for development. Once we have alternance at the level of fundamentals, especially for what we are targeting, reforms specifically, we're supposed to continue doing reforms. It's in 4 years that we can face all the challenges and give answers to that. Consequently, what I can say is that the first challenge is there. We need, first of all, to be able to have a consensus on the necessity of reform, whether at the government level, especially for this, the deadline, in a very short deadline, we can get good results. But if you have to go to archives of doing businesses, you can find years of when we started. We were not far away from Rwanda, whether for doing business or at the level of governance or in different fronts. And then what Rwanda is trying to put in place and what Rwanda is planning is not, let's say, slightly different to what we know. But we need simply to make some improvement, political will, etc. But going back or getting back to affairs, we have faced many challenges. But I have to say something here at this stage. Governments are not in competition vis-a-vis to, private sector. There is no way to be in conflict, commercially speaking, between the government and the private sector. We need to trust, let's say, mutual trust. And this is what we are doing. In terms of emphasizing on credibility, we are, I think, with the actual relation is very fundamental, and the fight against corruption, whether for people in the business environment, and for that,
pour qu'ils puissent s'engager.
We need to be sideline with people doing business so that we can do something better. First of all, justice has to be in place, and we need the justice machinery be more impartial and so speedy in terms of taking decision in the right moment. And then also we need investors can come, or other jurisdiction can always meet security in terms of coming to the country to invest. Then also by option, everything related to infrastructure. I know we have some gaps But there are things that we are trying to find solution quickly. For electricity, the penetration is that 92% of households have electricity. Today, we are started with a reform. 60% of producing electricity is for private sector. We will continue. We will continue because we've been producing the thermal energy. But what we're doing actually is that at the level of port infrastructures and facilities, the private sector came on board to take charge of that business. But we as a government will follow the same trend to put more efforts on telecom and ports, and indeed. But for tax policy, yes, indeed, we expanded the tax threshold with the VAT. But as the Prime Minister of Côte d'Ivoire was saying, if you have many taxes, you will kill also the businesses in the country. So finally, we need to move fast because actually we, in emergency situation, we need to accelerate a little bit. And also special zone for development clusters that will enable us to speed up the process of reforms. And we can also create or set up many, let's say, facilities in different islands, because we need also to see how we can adjust our legal machinery in terms of speeding up the process, whether for the tourism, for fintech and biotechnology. That's it, what I can say. Thank you.
Une question pour tous les quatre, évidemment un par un. C'est une petite polémique.
One question for you four. We have mostly during the World Assembly with Moy Ibrahim in Marrakech, it called upon support by, putting in the center of our focus, Africa especially, because of Africa is facing challenges of high taxes. So tell us a little bit, I don't know, what do you think about those international requirements, how we can find solution? We can start with you, Prime Minister of São Tomé Principe. Yes, listen. I think we do not have a big issue here. Honestly, it's up to us to define or to our goals. You see, yes, we need to define our standards. And I think there's no problem in terms of assessments we carry out. We do not have any problem to that. We need also to build capacity for resource mobilization for different African financial institutions. So anyway, we're so still and calm about that subject. Thank you. Prime Minister of Rwanda, thank you. I think we'll not face any problems by expressing yourself clearly. No, for me, my point of view is a little bit different, because if somebody is talking about you, you need also to think about yourself, because we African, what we are thinking about ourselves, because if there's things to improve or to correct, we have to do it, because people used to say that we do not have relevant data, because everything in those figures are based on statistics. We need to have accurate statistics that we can defend. And then you see, once you have clear figures, well analyzed, if somebody can carry out analysis that is presenting a very fuzzy or, a shallowed, figures, in that moment you can even contradict. But for me, it's not the perception that is putting us in a bad seat. Everybody of us has a role to play whether people, the assessors, but we as an African continent, what we are doing so that we can have accurate data on which we can focus the analysis of our economic situation. I think it's just a bad perception that people expressing vis-a-vis to Africa. But we need also to do a lot of work to continue to collect economic data, their analysis and their interpretation.
I would like to take the floor on the behalf of Ivory Coast. With the rating of Côte d'Ivoire, Moody, you have a good rating of Moody.
Ça nous conforte à l'idée que nous nous sommes imposés des contraintes et le président.
So the President of the Republic is helping us, is sticking on us to have an improvement to fight against corruption, social inclusion, doing business and respect of democracy, and then a setting of social peace that gives everyone the opportunity to express themselves and to be in a capacity to progress in socially. So the ratings are not a bad thing in themselves. The ratings is something that you must do, and then you must go through that the African countries, they have to improve that, the general aspect of their governance. But I think that the issue is what we do. What do we do with the rating? If we are using well with the ratings to help the African countries, so I think that the rating is a good thing. However, if the rating is done so that it is there to weaken the African economies, to give imposition rates that are interest rates that are very high, I think that we are going to be in difficulty. So in relation to interest rate, I think that there is a necessity that we need to put in place to highlight on the activity sectors that don't have the same issues. The primary sectors like agriculture, the secondary, the industries and the services like trade and something like that. We don't have the same issues. So when you want to help African countries, you have to have a framework where we have a different interest coefficients. It's very difficult in Africa when you are managing crisis conflicts, because we have crisis emergencies everywhere. We have security emergencies, social emergencies, education emergencies, health emergencies. So when you are managing those emergencies, you don't have time to negotiate an international level the best funding conditions. That's why the funders should affect to African countries interest rates that are concessional for infrastructure. I'm going to give you an example. For instance, for the cleaning of a city, is not going to give money back immediately. It's very hard to find a road. You need to reach 12% so that you can reach the rate that you need to have. So therefore, you need to affect concessional interest rate with credit maturity that are very long, so that we can have time to really have an impact on the economy, which we can say in general terms, that's the development. When we talk about the development of a road, you need to develop it and to fund it on better rates so that we can be able to produce what we can produce to strengthen our economy. So the interest rates are very hard. But in terms of infrastructure, we need to go for concessional interest rate for the loans. Thank you very much. Thank you. Every rating may be well observed. It depends on where you are. Of course, when you have a bad result, you say, okay, this is not true, and then sometimes you say it doesn't represent me. However, a rating is a rating. You may use it as a tool of progress, by asking yourself the right questions on different aspects of things that need to be changed and improved on that point of view. So each rating is good in that line. So what is essential is how do we consider that rating? Is it an element that helps us to review ourselves, to change the way we do things, to give ourselves goals? It can give us good results. I believe that we need to consider that as the first element. Second thing is we need to recognize, therefore, that in today's world, it is through metadata that we need to help and support decision making. For instance, a big bank and that has been established for decades in Africa has decided to leave the continent and to go to other horizons. However, the analysis, perspectives, projection of the future show that the Africa will become the continent that you need to consider for the development of the future. It means that with these kinds of ratings, you need to be careful because you project your way of seeing things, your vision actually. So whenever you are in a cycle, you see a cycle. So when you are 30 degrees farther, you don't see that, you see an ellipsis. So when you are at 90 degrees, the person who sees it as a cycle, he sees that it's a segment. So it depends on the perspective. It depends really on what you see yourself, on what you put before you as objectives in terms of ratings. But currently, as an African, we as Africans, we need to tell ourselves that we must consider some data, and then so that we may use them to do a better management, to have capacity of collect, knowing that you don't need to spend what you don't have, that you have to reduce debt, and then you need to increase and to anticipate, to go forward and to highlight, and then to work on what has been done. A country like China that was underdeveloped 40 years ago now is a powerhouse, global powerhouse. It is not forbidden to the African continent to take things with determination by fixing the goals that are precise and then catalyzing all the efforts and put in place everything that can create a strong market of entrepreneurs with effective entrepreneurs that put forward the interest of their companies, of course, but the interest of their country, and reduce this so that they may create economy, and then we work with cash economy. I think that the rating is going to change for African countries in this context.
Thank you so much indeed. Let me go back to the CFTA that's taking time to be set up, to be established. I think it's taking time. The free trade area, I think we're still facing comparative advantages to stimulate production of processed products. But falsely, I think we have different impact on each of your country. São Tomé, for example, your trade is in large portion with Brazil and Portugal. Guinea has 5 neighbors. 2 of them are more industrialized, like Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire, others less the rate of industrialization, for example, Sierra Leone. Do you think the free trade area will bring consequences about the economic policies we're trying to put in place, in particular on the climate of doing businesses? Mr. Trovada, you have the floor, please. Thank you. Yes, we are member of ECAS. We are in the sub-region, not really well integrated in different recs in the continent, but we are taking charge and we are aware of this issue. First of all, regarding the imports, vis-a-vis the imports, and also about the inflation rate is, taken in a very ascendant way, and most of our market is in a sub-region. The particularity is that we are actually in a CFA franc zone, and then actually, but knowing some difficulties at the currency side, we're in 30 minutes of Libreville, but you need to have a euro or dollars in terms of being in trade with Gabon. But anyway, we've already took time to be more aware about the trend of the market with the integration in Africa context. We are trying to attract more African economic operators to come and invest with us or trade with us. Consequently, I have to say that it's the trend. It's the trend. We are trying to follow the move. Yes, indeed, it will take time. I think this has been said since the morning. The issue is maybe in a side of political will, let's say that way, because actually business people or operators are still continuing to complain about that. We, as a member in EEC, we are targeting to become member of the ECOWAS, and then we know very well that our solution for economic, expectations has to be decided somewhere. That's why, for those who based on cash economy, we need to follow the trends, and that will enable us to develop the trade. Thank you so much, Mr. Ngirende. Thank you for the question. I think debate on the free trade area. For that, I do not have any question to debate about that. There is no way to go back to the significance of the free trade area. There's no doubt. Yeah, I know there's no more importance for that, but the impact, we need this decision. But the debate is how to achieve, how to implement the free trade area. For the impact in economic sector, we know that will have a positive impact. But for my own country, Rwanda, from a long path, it has been a defender of the economic growth, or also for continental integration. Rwanda is among the first signatories for the free trade area in the continent, and we have been positive. Rwanda, we have been positive for the advantages and the significance of this free trade area. But as a government, we are trying to put in place efforts showing the world that we are more open. I think by coming to country in Rwanda, the visa issue is already solved. I think for you can say it. Actually, the movement, the free movement of people is very important for doing businesses. That's the reason why Rwanda decided to clean up this issue of visa for entering Rwanda. It's the same for many countries. It's the same for, what I wanted to say is we need also to call upon other countries to do the same, if possible. We are a landlocked country, yes indeed, but we think that all the countries can sign and do what they have decided to do. Because when we started a long run of negotiation with the free trade areas, many countries were positive. They show how it was important, but once we started to step forward to implement that idea, you can see some countries are slowing their paces. And then we were convinced and saying that it's very important. We put in place our strategy. We started even with that free trade area machinery by opening our doors to our friends and brothers and sisters in Africa. Thank you. For Ivory Coast or Côte d'Ivoire, historically, I can say that Côte d'Ivoire is a country of integration. That is something you have to know. 25% of Ivorian populations are immigrants. This is the high rate in Africa, maybe in the world. So you see, Côte d'Ivoire is a country, is a hosting country, is a country where everybody can find himself like home. We are always in that culture to live with others. And then for the historical path of immigration in Côte d'Ivoire, since the beginning, since the independence time, we started with the politics of mutual, understanding or a brotherhood policies, where we can fraternize, report, or let's say mutual, being or with other countries. We put in place a good climate to live together. We encourage the market of economies. So we in that trend of integration. But for the free trade area, it's coming naturally just to top up the system of integration in the Côte d'Ivoire. Yes, we are among one of the champion countries. But to achieve that goal, we need to meet the requirement. First of all, competitiveness of our economy, all right, so that our product being exposed, that will be put in the market, be a very attractive product. Second condition is communication between different countries. For example, we need to move from Abidjan to Alger to Dakar without any hindrances in the road, all right? And from Cairo to South Africa, Pretoria, nothing. We need to develop infrastructure, road infrastructure, communication, you see, even air transport. We need to develop all those facilities. That will make our life easier. The other condition is different criteria of our economy. We need to have a convergence of our criteria. Once we have too much disparity, the free trade area will cause us a lot of problem and not enable African to get benefit of what we're expecting to get. Whether the free trade area is a big opportunity for us in terms of possibilities. So for that, I can say in Côte d'Ivoire, the free trade area is a good luck for Africa. It's
incentives for each country to go in the development direction, and then to have a private sector that is thriving. Otherwise, the country may be inexistent. My country, Guinea, has challenges in terms of infrastructure. That's why in these 3 years that the main objectives was to develop infrastructure, the roads, the railways, and digitalization of the country, and then opening the country to other parts of the country. So the comparative advantages that are constituted the data for each country to develop its comparative advantages is for Guinea, and Guinea is a country that is allowing that has a great mining potential and hydroelectricity potential that is really important. And we think in terms of agriculture, we have advantages, and then we have other advantage, which is the population that has a big diaspora representation throughout the world.
And this is like a very historical where that is not really used, and I think that Guinea can put themselves on them on know-how, on capital, technical capacity, and be present where we have Trans-Guinean that speaks Transdu, and they explore. Also, we have Altair. They have a refinery of bauxite at Kamsar, and also we have an industrial field that they will put in place on that zone, and they also have a will to develop agriculture so that they can come out from this dependency, and we don't see this zone of free like a free zone of free zone, but we see it as a will to reinforce complementarity in the zone, and the demography that is really fast growing, that shows that we need a market that can lead or bring private equity where they can make benefit. So we are really in line in terms of development with this EFCFTA, and I think other side is only economy that can help us to consolidate it. And at the south we have at the south side Simandu, Farana, near countries like Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire, and Sierra Leone. We need to have a dynamic cooperation of exploitation of all our soil resources, so that these can be exploited with neighboring country, and it will help us to be to have what I can call eco prosperity. And with bauxite and the gas of Senegal and sources of integration through needs of different industries, so that our different economies should complete themselves, so there is no rivalry here. So the perspective here will be a big implication of economies with a private sector, local private sector internationalized, or I will say Africanized. Let me say, for example, that talk about the bank sector. Most of the banks in Guinea, we have Burkina-based bank, we have Nigerian bank. So this really will help to strengthen or that will allow this free zone of exchange, or I will already say the integration for our different countries. Thank you so much. I have a last question for of you. So just in few words, but just be very precise, concise. How are you seeing your different countries? That's in perspective in 10 years. So maybe Mr. Trovala, let's just start with you. With Prime Minister, we don't have any limitation in terms of mandate. I think that it has become an habit. So I think that I'm very optimistic. We are on the good track, we say reforms. We are on reform ways. We are accelerating digitalization of all the countries. And what we really need is that we need to have a focus on education and the young people. We have to focus on youth, on training. Digitalization will also help us to fast track this sector, and I also think that we also have a problem of an emergency, and if we are not able to solve it very quickly, maybe we have a series of and we have a climate change. We have to react. We don't need to wait to have big forums and making a big announcement and also collecting funds. I think that we have to do the work by ourselves. We have to educate people. We have to find very innovative solution of funding. We had a conference last time on finance principles in terms of biodiversity, and therefore, I think that if we have this issue of emergency, like if you are willing to be more concrete, I think that when we are making very interesting speech, we have to include young people that are getting ready, and they are very extraordinary, and the future can only be bright. And it's not a slogan, we are the continent of the future. But if you ask me what is the problem, I would rather say that, as it's very concise, I would just tell me, I think the problem is a very political problem. We do not have stability. We have conflict among countries, no democracy, and I think that this is what we have to correct. I know that it won't be an easy task, but we have to know that the problem is just around. Thank you.
Pour la question.
Yes, thank you so much indeed for the question being asked. How I can see my country in 10 coming years? I'm very optimistic. Yes, indeed. But I need to start first of all by talking about for the continent in general. We're always trying to picture or to portray the country with 1.4 billions of markets simply for the African population. Before Africa to be market, a real market, we need to have a very strong purchasing power. Let's do this. What can we do for our population to have a strong purchasing power so that our people can buy what we are producing? This is what we are looking for, a very important factor for the free trade area. If I have to mention about my country, yes, indeed, we carry out an assessment with the World Bank vis-à-vis to this reality of economic rate of Rwanda with an average of 8% for the 15 last years. But what finally... What will be the future driver? What will going to conduct to drive our economy for the future? I think with this assessment, we say the human capital is something very important. And then the country, 30 million of people with 3,500,000, we have young children in primary education. And then I'm very optimistic that population will continue to be educated, and by 10 years Rwanda will be a very educated country with an income that can enable him or it to buy products that we've already put in the market. And then we'll continue to get ourselves more developed, because comparing to 20 years in the past, with where we are actually, you can simply say we are moving forward with the progress, and the progress in country will be more exponential. This is the way I can be more optimistic. Thank you.
C'est un exercice difficile.
For me, I think it's a very difficult task. That's the reason why I asked that question. Oh yes, indeed. For 10 years, I would like, truly, my country and many African countries to express and to experience a growth rate with two figures, because we will masterize the agro-business and the agricultural sector, also the value of our minerals. The poverty rate has to decrease to 5%, and the inflation rate cannot exceed 1% from our economy. And then this is the promise, this is a pledge, and this is a direction where we have to move forward. I would like to have indeed the budgetary balance. We need to understand that for some countries we're 2%, others 4%, but we'll come to the balance in a perfect way soon. Income per inhabitants will be $10 to $15, maybe. I don't know. If we can have a well-reinforced democracy and no social inequality, but security is very important for our citizens. Because of the democracy, we have too much insecurities. Yeah, indeed, of course, because of the politics. It's not democracy, it's politics. Oh yes, sometimes not well understood. Security issue is a big issue. We need to have a reinforced democracy, but also the national champions have to work hand in hand with the big international companies to make our countries to become El Dorado. And then our citizens will be well respected, admired, and become citizens of the world. Let's wish it that way. Thank you. And I believe for 10 years of Guinea has already started. From the next year, thanks to God, I think the mineral income will enable us to have the income of 1.5 billion per year, or why not to simply say $2.5 billion of income per year. Based on those income, 20% of those income will be dedicated for the development of human capital, especially for education in general perspective. This means in the next 10 coming years, more, if you have to add Simandu or the iron mineral, the transformation of different minerals in a country with the bauxite or cobalt refinery will emerge out of resources which are not only the limit, but I think whether the gallium, whether the lithium, you see, there is a very sensitive minerals for the industry, actually, with the possibility to go up to the aluminum refinery to do or to process the bauxite. Exactly, for Saudi Arabia, we have oil. For Guinea, perspectives are very interesting. I cannot even talk more about agriculture, which is a cohesion factor, but also the stability of the country. But for the next 10 years, Guinea will emerge, and economically speaking, will have a country strong and politically stable with a very reconciled society, and by this basis they can continue to stabilize the cash economy even in the continent, in the Sahelian countries. Those countries need to have the reference point, the attraction pool, whether poverty can go far away from our continent. And young people from Western Africa will know that there is a hope in that country. 10 future years for Guinea will make Guinea to be emerged, and we will have a new country. Because in 1950, people were saying the Guinea started its, path to become the powerful economic country in Africa. But I think for the next 10 years, if we work well, that will enable us to expand our prosperity with other countries that I cannot even mention the names of those countries to not attract jealousy people. Thank you. Thank you. Excuse me, I don't need to put you in trouble, but I think prime ministers are more open than the head of states. Excuse me, I was just simply kidding. Thank you so much indeed to have participated in this panel. It's a very rich panel. And thank you to those who organize, put in place this panel. We receive well-reached ideas. Thank you to you four, and wish you all the best and success also for the continuation of this forum. Thank you.